The sky above the city didn't tear open with thunder or fire the way humans imagined alien invasions. It simply stopped behaving like a sky. Clouds froze mid-motion, birds hovered in the air like paused video frames, and the sunlight dimmed into a metallic silver glow. People on the streets looked up together, confused, phones raised, mouths open, half expecting a movie trailer to start playing across the horizon. Then the shape appeared. It wasn't a ship in the traditional sense. It was too smooth, too symmetrical, too elegant. It hovered without sound, like reality itself had decided to host something it didn't fully understand. Windows lit up across its surface, forming patterns that looked suspiciously like eyes watching everything below. Inside that impossible structure, a throne floated in the center of a circular chamber. The being seated upon it was not monstrous. That was the problem. She looked almost human, almost, but not quite. Her skin shimmered faintly, as if light hesitated before touching it. Her eyes reflected too much, like mirrors that had learned to think. Her posture was regal, precise, controlled, the kind of posture that suggested she had never once needed to ask for permission in her entire existence. Around her stood a dozen figures, tall and angular, their expressions rigid with barely concealed frustration. "You underestimated them," one of them said, voice sharp and metallic. Again. The Queen did not move. "Humans do not possess interstellar weapons. Their technology is primitive. Their societies are unstable. Their emotional patterns are irrational. Yet they resisted your projections," another crew member snapped. "Your simulations were wrong. Your confidence was wrong." The Queen's fingers tightened slightly on the armrest of her throne. "Correct your tone." Silence fell, but it was not obedience. It was resentment. "Our law is clear," the first one said. "When a ruler misjudges a species, she must prove her understanding. Not through conquest. Through humility." The word tasted foreign in the air. The Queen's gaze shifted toward the planet below. Millions of humans moved through their tiny lives, unaware that a cosmic tribunal had just begun debating their worth. "What do you propose?" she asked calmly. "You will serve one of them," the crew replied in unison. For the first time in centuries, the Queen blinked. "Serve?" she repeated slowly, as if tasting a dangerous chemical. "Yes," said the first crew member. "You will live among them. Observe them. Obey their requests within reason. Learn them not as a conqueror, but as a subject." The Queen's lips curved in something that was not quite a smile. "You confuse discipline with humiliation." "We confuse nothing," the crew replied. "This is the law you signed into existence." For a long moment, the Queen said nothing. Then she rose from her throne, her presence shifting the gravity of the room. "Very well," she said. "Select the human." They did not choose a hero. They did not choose a leader, a scientist, or a warrior. That would have been too easy. They chose him because he was ordinary. He was sitting on a broken bench near a tea stall, scrolling endlessly through his phone, half listening to a friend complain about life. He wore simple clothes, his posture lazy, his expression permanently stuck between boredom and mild sarcasm. He had no idea that in that exact moment, an interstellar civilization was zooming in on his existence like a cosmic joke. When the air in front of him shimmered, he assumed it was heat or imagination. When it split open and a figure stepped out of nothingness, he dropped his phone. People screamed. Someone ran. Someone filmed. Someone fainted. She stood there calmly, as if teleporting into crowded cities was an everyday inconvenience. Her eyes scanned the surroundings with analytical precision, then settled on him. He stared back, blinking. "Are you cosplay?" he asked carefully. Behind her, invisible to human eyes, the alien crew watched with cold anticipation. She took one step forward. Then another. Her voice carried without effort, neither loud nor soft, but impossible to ignore. "My crew demand I serve you, human," she said. The sentence hit the crowd like a malfunctioning translation program. He looked around. "Me?" She nodded once. A nervous laugh escaped him. "Look, if this is some prank show, I didn't sign any forms. She did not respond to humor. She studied it. Inside her mind, calculations began. This was not humiliation. This was research. Her species had conquered worlds through logic, efficiency, and control. But humans operated on something else entirely. They contradicted themselves constantly. They valued irrational things. They made decisions based on invisible feelings rather than measurable outcomes. If Earth was to be judged worthy of joining the Galactic Council, she needed proof. Not data. Understanding. So she stood there, in front of an ordinary human who still thought this was a joke, and said the words that would change both their lives. And I will. The crowd erupted. Cameras flashed. Social media exploded within seconds. He looked at her again, scratching his head. Okay, he said slowly. So, what does that mean exactly? She tilted her head slightly. The movement was subtle, but it fascinated him for reasons he couldn't explain. It means, she said, you will continue your life. And I will observe it. Observe how? She paused. Her crew waited for her to assert dominance, to establish authority, to define terms. Instead, she said something unexpected. By helping you. He laughed. That's dangerous. I can barely help myself. The first test began without him realizing it. Across the street, an elderly man dropped a bag of groceries. Fruits rolled across the pavement. People walked past, pretending not to notice. The Queen watched him closely. If humans were selfish, he would ignore it. If they were logical, he would calculate the cost of time and effort. If they were emotionally driven, he would act without thinking. He hesitated. He sighed. He stood up reluctantly. Great, he muttered, walking toward the mess. Now I'm late and heroic. He helped the old man gather the groceries, awkwardly apologizing as if it were his fault. The old man smiled gratefully. From the Queen's perspective, the action was inefficient, unnecessary, and poorly executed. He tripped over an apple. He dropped a bag. He made a joke to hide embarrassment. He failed the test perfectly. Yet something strange happened in her chest. Her instruments detected it before she did. A fluctuation. Not logical. Not measurable. Interesting. When he returned, she looked at him as if he were a puzzle that refused to follow instructions. So, he said, sitting down again. Are you going to follow me everywhere now? Yes, she replied without hesitation. He stared at her. That's concerning. She did not laugh. But inside, for the first time in her existence, the Queen of an interstellar empire felt something dangerously close to amusement. He spent the next morning convincing himself that none of it had really happened. That was his first mistake. When he opened his eyes, the ceiling above him was still the same cracked white paint, the fan still made that familiar whining noise, and the world looked stubbornly normal. For a moment he felt relieved. Aliens didn't exist. Queens didn't teleport into tea stalls. Cosmic empires didn't select random people as experimental subjects. Then he noticed that his phone was floating. Not metaphorically. Literally. It hovered a few centimeters above his hand, rotating slowly, as if being inspected by an invisible force. He froze. Good morning, a voice said from the corner of the room. He turned his head slowly. She stood there, perfectly still, as if she had always belonged inside his tiny bedroom. The curtains fluttered slightly behind her, even though the windows were closed. Her gaze moved from the fan to the walls to the messy pile of clothes with clinical curiosity. Why is your habitat so inefficiently organized? She asked. He stared at her. For a long moment, his brain refused to cooperate with reality. Then he screamed. She waited patiently while he jumped out of bed, stumbled over a chair, nearly collided with the wall, and finally managed to stand upright, breathing heavily. You're real, he said. Yes. You followed me home. Yes. You're in my room. Yes. He looked around as if expecting hidden cameras. Is this some international prank? No. He rubbed his face. Okay. Fine. Great. Wonderful. Fantastic. So, what exactly are you doing here? I am serving you, she replied calmly. He stared at her again. I feel like we have very different definitions of that word. She considered this. Explain. He hesitated. Usually when someone says they'll serve you, they don't invade your personal space before breakfast. She nodded slightly, storing the information like data. Understood, she said. I will reduce invasive proximity by 12.7%. That's not how humans talk, he muttered. She ignored that. He walked toward the kitchen, still half expecting her to disappear like a hallucination. She followed silently, observing everything: the narrow hallway, the chipped tiles, the small kitchen, the old kettle. What do you consume in the morning? She asked. Tea, he said automatically. She lifted her hand. The kettle vibrated, then began to glow faintly. Water inside it started boiling without being turned on. He nearly dropped the cup he was holding. Please do not manipulate fundamental physical laws inside my house, he said. Why? Because I pay electricity bills like a normal human. She looked genuinely confused. You pay to access energy? Yes. Her eyes narrowed slightly, as if humanity had just committed a moral crime. She poured tea with unnatural precision, every movement graceful, controlled, calculated. When she handed him the cup, her fingers brushed his hand for less than a second. He noticed. She pretended not to. Inside her mind, sensors recorded an anomaly: elevated temperature in both subjects, irregular heartbeat, unexplained hesitation. She categorized it as irrelevant. He took a sip. Okay, he said carefully. So you're an alien queen. Your crew told you to serve me. And now you're making tea with magic science. Correct. And this will last how long? Until I understand humanity. He laughed weakly. Good luck with that. The second test began later that day, disguised as something ordinary. They walked through a crowded street. People stared at her, whispered, tried to take pictures. She ignored them all, focused entirely on him, as if he were the only variable that mattered. He felt strangely uncomfortable under that level of attention. You're making people nervous, he said. They are statistically insignificant, she replied. He stopped walking. She stopped too. What? She asked. You can't say that, he said. Why? Because people aren't statistics. They're people. She studied his expression. Define the difference. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. I don't know how to define it. You just feel it. She recorded the phrase. A few meters away, a man was arguing loudly with a shopkeeper. The argument escalated quickly. Voices rose. Tempers flared. The queen watched carefully. This is a test, she said quietly. He blinked. A test of what? Logic versus emotion. She explained the scenario with unsettling clarity. If he intervened, he would waste time, risk embarrassment, and gain nothing. Logic suggested he should ignore it and continue his day. Emotion suggested something else. He hesitated. He sighed. Why does every dramatic moment happen when I'm tired? He muttered. Then he stepped forward. He didn't handle it well. He interrupted at the wrong moment, misunderstood the problem, and accidentally made the situation worse. The shopkeeper yelled at him. The angry man accused him of taking sides. A small crowd gathered. For 30 seconds he wished he had listened to logic. Then he tried again. This time he listened, spoke calmly, made jokes, softened the tension. Slowly, the argument dissolved into awkward silence and reluctant apologies. When it was over, he walked back to the queen, slightly embarrassed. Well, he said, that was inefficient. Yes, she replied. I messed it up. Yes. He waited for criticism. Instead, she said something unexpected. Your decision was irrational. He shrugged. That happens a lot. But it was consistent with your internal values, she added slowly. He looked at her sideways. Is that alien language for you did okay? She did not answer. That night, they sat on the rooftop of his building. The city lights stretched endlessly below them. For him, it was just another familiar view. For her, it was a living map of millions of unpredictable minds. Why do humans help each other when it is inefficient? She asked. He thought for a moment. Because if nobody helps anyone, life becomes unbearable. She looked at him quietly. From the perspective of her species, logic had always ruled. Empires were built on efficiency, not feelings. Yet here was a creature who willingly chose emotional complexity over rational advantage. He wasn't heroic. He wasn't brilliant. He wasn't powerful. He was something else. Something harder to classify. As the night wind moved across the rooftop, he suddenly felt her gaze again. You're staring, he said. I am analyzing, she corrected. Same thing. She paused, then asked softly, Does my presence disturb you? He hesitated. For a moment, honesty fought with sarcasm. Yeah, he admitted. A little. Her expression did not change, but something inside her calculations shifted. And? She asked. He looked at the city lights, then back at her. But it's also kind of interesting. For the first time, the Queen did not immediately record the answer. Instead, she simply looked at him, and wondered when exactly her experiment had started to feel less like research, and more like something dangerously personal. The next day began with silence, and silence made him nervous. Usually she asked questions the moment he opened his eyes. Why humans slept so long? Why dreams mattered? Why pillows existed? Why emotions lingered even when logic said they shouldn't? But this morning, she stood by the window, looking out at the city with an expression that felt different. Not curious. Calculating. You're quiet, he said while tying his shoes. I am processing accumulated data, she replied. That sounds dangerous. She turned slightly toward him. Danger is relative. He didn't like the way she said that. They walked through the city again, but this time she didn't follow him like a shadow. She walked beside him, matching his pace almost perfectly, as if she had finally learned the rhythm of human movement. People stared, whispered, pointed. He tried to ignore it, but he felt strangely protective, even though he had no idea why. After a while, she stopped in front of a tall building made of glass and steel. What is this? She asked. An office building, he said. People work here. Mostly to survive. She looked up at the structure, eyes reflecting the sky. Work, she repeated. Ambition. Hierarchy. Competition. He blinked. You've been reading something, haven't you? Yes. That answer worried him more than anything else. Inside, she led him to the top floor with a gesture that confused security systems and reality itself. The city looked smaller from above, like a model rather than a living organism. This is your third test, isn't it? He asked quietly. Yes. He sighed. I was hoping you'd forget about those. She stepped closer. For a moment, he became painfully aware of how close she was. Not threatening. Not aggressive. Just present. Humans often claim that loyalty is important, she said. Yet they frequently abandon it when offered sufficient reward. That's not always true. I intend to verify. The air around them changed. Suddenly, the world seemed to pause again, just like the first day. People froze mid-step. Cars stopped without sound. The city became a painting. He felt a strange pressure in his chest. What did you do? He asked. I isolated this moment from linear time, she said calmly. For the purpose of clarity. He stared at her. You can do that? Yes. Couldn't you have led with that ability earlier? She ignored the sarcasm. Observe, she said. The space in front of them folded inward like paper. Images appeared in the air, vivid and impossible. He saw himself. Not as he was now, but as he could be. He saw a version of his life where he was rich, respected, confident. He walked through luxurious spaces. People listened when he spoke. His family lived comfortably. His struggles vanished like bad dreams. He felt his heart speed up. "This is not illusion," she said. "It is probability. With my intervention, this outcome is achievable." He swallowed. "What's the catch?" She looked at him directly. "You must abandon your current attachments." He frowned. "Attachments?" She expanded the image. He saw friends fading from his life. He saw familiar streets disappearing. He saw people who had helped him, laughed with him, trusted him, slowly becoming distant memories. In this future, he was successful. And alone. "You gain ambition fulfilled," she said. "But loyalty sacrificed." He laughed nervously. "You aliens really don't do things halfway, do you?" She waited. Inside her mind, every sensor was active. This was the most important test. The one that would determine whether humans were fundamentally self-serving or capable of resisting temptation. He stared at the images for a long time. For a moment, he wanted them. He imagined waking up without fear of failure. Without financial stress. Without feeling invisible. He imagined becoming someone the world respected. Comedy flashed through his mind in strange ways. Him giving arrogant interviews. Him pretending he always believed in himself. Him forgetting how to make tea because servants did it for him. He almost laughed. "Do I get cool outfits at least?" he asked. "Yes." He nodded thoughtfully. "Tempting." She waited, expression unreadable. Then he shook his head slowly. "No." The images flickered. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Explain," she said. He looked at the frozen city below. "If I become that person," he said, "I won't recognize myself anymore." "That is irrelevant," she replied. "It's not." He turned to her. "Maybe humans are messy," he said. "Maybe we make stupid decisions. But if success means throwing away everyone who made me who I am, then it's not success. It's just loneliness with better furniture." For the first time since meeting him, she hesitated. Her calculations stalled. Her algorithms returned contradictory results. The probability of this response had been low. The frozen city around them trembled slightly, as if reality itself was confused. Before she could respond, the silence shattered. The air behind her cracked open, and shapes emerged from it. Her crew. They appeared in sharp, angular forms, their presence cold and precise. Their eyes moved between her and him with open disapproval. "This experiment has exceeded acceptable emotional thresholds," one of them said. He blinked. "Do they always talk like villains in sci-fi movies?" She did not answer. "You have delayed your conclusion," another crew member said to her. "Your behavior indicates bias." "I am still analyzing," she replied. "Analysis is complete," they said. "Humans are inefficient, emotional, and unreliable. They do not meet the standards of the Galactic Council." He felt something tighten in his chest. He hadn't realized how much he cared about their judgment until that moment. The Queen looked at him. For a second, he saw something he had never seen in her eyes before. Conflict. He laughed softly, trying to hide it. "So," he said lightly, "I failed your test again, didn't I?" Her crew waited for her answer. She did not speak immediately. In her mind, logic fought emotion for the first time in her existence. Humans were flawed. Humans were irrational. Humans failed constantly. And yet, standing there in front of her, smiling awkwardly despite cosmic judgment, he felt more real than anything in her perfectly ordered universe. "I did not say you failed," she said quietly. Her crew turned toward her in shock. He looked at her, surprised. In that suspended moment between worlds, she realized something terrifying. Her experiment had succeeded. But not in the way she had planned. She had not only studied humanity. She had begun to understand it. And worse, she had begun to care. The city snapped back into motion without warning. Sound rushed in like a wave, engines roaring, people talking, horns blaring, life continuing as if nothing extraordinary had ever happened. To everyone else, the moment on the rooftop had never existed. But for him, the weight of it stayed heavy in his chest, like gravity had been rewritten just for him. Her crew remained, invisible to the world but painfully real to her. "You are required to deliver your final judgment," one of them said, voice cold and precise. "The Galactic Council will not tolerate further delay." He looked at her sideways. "So this is it?" She did not answer immediately. For the first time since she had appeared in his life, she seemed uncertain. They stood on the edge of the rooftop, the city stretching endlessly below them. From up here, humans looked small, fragile, chaotic, ridiculous, beautiful. He felt a strange urge to say something heroic. Instead, he said, "If I knew aliens were grading us, I would have tried harder in life." She looked at him. "Your humor is a defense mechanism," she said. "Yeah," he admitted. "So is your emotional detachment." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "You learn fast," she said. He shrugged. "I had a very intense teacher." Her crew watched silently as she stepped forward, her presence suddenly heavier, more regal, more distant. The air around her seemed to shift, as if reality remembered who she truly was. She raised her hand. Above the city, the sky changed again. This time, everyone could see it. The massive alien vessel revealed itself fully, no longer hidden behind distortions. People stopped in streets. Cars halted. Phones rose. Fear spread like electricity. Her voice echoed across the sky, amplified not by speakers, but by something deeper. "Citizens of Earth," she said. He stared at her, stunned. "You didn't tell me about the public speech part." She didn't look at him. "I have completed my evaluation," she continued. "Humanity is inefficient, emotionally unstable, logically inconsistent, socially divided." Her crew stood behind her, satisfied. Below, people listened in silence. He felt his stomach drop. "However," she said. The word cut through the air like a blade. "Humanity possesses a rare and dangerous quality." The crew stiffened. He held his breath. "You choose connection over advantage, loyalty over ambition, meaning over perfection. Your flaws are not weaknesses. They are evidence of something this universe has nearly forgotten." She turned slightly, her gaze drifting toward him for a fraction of a second. "Courage." The crew reacted immediately. "This conclusion is irrational," one of them said sharply. "It is accurate," she replied. He felt something warm in his chest, something he didn't know how to name. "I therefore recommend," she said, her voice steady, "that Earth be granted provisional inclusion in the Galactic Council." The world below erupted. People shouted, cried, laughed, argued, celebrated, panicked, all at once. Behind her, the crew stared at her as if she had rewritten the laws of physics. "You risk the stability of the Empire," one of them warned. She lowered her hand slowly. "The Empire," she said, "has survived on logic alone for too long." Then she turned away from them. She walked toward him. For a moment, the queen of an interstellar civilization stood in front of an ordinary human who still couldn't afford decent shoes and still made jokes when he was scared. Up close, she looked less like a ruler and more like someone trying to understand a language she had never spoken before. "You manipulated me," he said quietly. "Yes." "You tested me." "Yes." He nodded slowly. "Fair enough." She waited, as if expecting anger. Instead, he smiled faintly. "So," he said, "did I pass?" She studied him. "By every logical standard," she said, "you failed." He sighed dramatically. "Figures. But by human standards," she continued, "you succeeded." He looked up at her. "That might be the nicest insult anyone's ever given me." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The noise of the city felt distant. Her crew watched from behind, unable to understand what was happening between them. "Why did you really recommend Earth?" he asked softly. She hesitated. For the first time since he had met her, she did not answer like a scientist or a queen. I began this mission believing humans were inferior, she said. I believed emotions were inefficiencies. I believed attachment was weakness. He listened without interrupting. Then I met you, she said. He laughed awkwardly. I feel like that's not a good sign for humanity. It is, she said. He blinked. You are inconsistent, flawed, contradictory, she continued. Yet you refuse to abandon what you care about, even when logic tells you to. He shrugged. Someone has to make bad decisions for emotional reasons. Otherwise the universe would be boring. She looked at him for a long moment. Humans are flawed, she said slowly. He nodded. Tell me something I don't know. She tilted her head slightly. And that, she said, is precisely why you are dangerously lovable. He froze. For a second, his brain completely stopped functioning. Somewhere in the distance, her crew pretended not to notice what was happening. So, he said carefully, are you still serving me? She considered the question. Her posture shifted, not as a queen, not as a scientist, but as something quieter. I am no longer required to, she said. He felt an unexpected pang of disappointment. Then why are you still here? He asked. She looked at the city. Then at him. Then, very slowly, she said, because I choose to be. He stared at her, unsure whether to joke or stay silent. Finally, he smiled. Great, he said. Just promise me one thing. What? Next time you want to test humanity, he said, don't start with my life. For the first time, the alien queen laughed. Not like a ruler. Not like a machine. But like someone who had just discovered that imperfection might be the most powerful thing in the universe.